Welcome, everybody, to Tino's Time. And on this episode, we are going to recap a super wild card weekend that it was, the first round of the playoffs. And then we're going to preview the divisional round. It's down to 8 teams. Which teams are going to make it to the championship week? But before we get to the divisional round, let's talk about this super wild card weekend. We had 14 teams. We had 6 games. It was amazing. We had the first ever Monday night game, and all these games turned into blowouts. But we had Nickelodeon game. We had a game that ended on a play that we're never gonna hear the end of for 200 years. So let's not waste any more time and let's recap all the action that went down in Super Wild Card Weekend. And the first game that went down, it was Saturday. It was the Raiders versus the Bengals. And this game, everybody was talking about Joey B and Joey B, and then Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, all the guys on the Bengals. But nobody was really talking about the Raiders because the Raiders snuck in and they beat the Chargers in that wild Sunday night game at the end of the season for either win or go home. And like I mentioned a second ago, a lot of these games turned into blowouts, but this was one of the games that actually ended in a semi-decent score. But Joe Burrow put on an absolute show. He had 244 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. He didn't throw any interceptions. Jamar Chase put on a show in his debut in the playoffs. He had 116 yards and 9 receptions. Joe Mixon had 48 yards. He didn't do too bad. CJ Uzama was the guy that benefited the most besides Jamar Chase, and he even caught a touchdown in the game. If you're doing a playoff challenge, hopefully you took CJ, but if not, that's okay. But the Bengals ended up winning the game 26-19 and moving on to the next round. And at this time, we didn't know who was going to face who in the playoffs and who was going to do their thing and who was going to face each other because there were so many different things that could happen, and it was wild. But after the Bengals won, we had another game on Sunday, and after Joey B put up numbers like he was just doing his thing on a regular day, Josh Allen decided to say, I'm going to play rookie mode on Madden, and I'm going to throw more touchdowns than completions. Or I'm sorry, incompletions. He threw 5 touchdowns, and he only had 4 incompletions, people. He went 21 for 25 with 308 yards with 5 touchdowns. He even ran the ball a little bit like he always does, and he just put on a show. The Bengals destroyed the Patriots 47-17. Devin Singletary continued to dominate his late season run. He had 2 touchdowns and 81 yards. Dawson Knox was the guy that benefited the most from Josh Allen's day. Dawson Knox at 89 yards, 5 receptions, and 2 touchdowns. Dawson Knox and Josh Allen continue to show that they have this great connection. Stephon Diggs didn't have too big of a game, but that's okay, and it shows that the Bills don't need to have Stephon Diggs or Gabriel Davis or somebody else every week. It seems like it's somebody new. On the other side of the ball, though, Bill Belichick looked like he was about to rip his hair out, and it didn't look like it was going good for the Patriots at all. Mac Jones had 232 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They couldn't get anything going. It was not a good game at all, and at halftime, the Bills were dominating so much that it just seemed like that they were done, and, the Patriots couldn't get anything going. They did score 17 points, like I said, but it just was not enough to beat Josh Allen and the Bills. So now that we know the matchups, now it is going to be the Titans versus the Bengals and the Bills versus the team that we'll talk about in the Sunday night game that happened on Sunday. But before we get to the Sunday night game, let's talk about the other 2 games that happened on Sunday besides the Sunday night game. It started on Sunday with the GOAT, Tom Brady, and the Buccaneers ready to defend their titles versus the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, they were all coming in. They were feeling good. They made the playoffs. But Jalen Hurts didn't show up. The Eagles didn't show up. And they just let Tom Brady play catch and continue to dominate. And Tom Brady looks like he's on his way to his number 8th ring. And he's going to take this NFL by storm. And he's putting up 5,000 yards. He's putting up 40-plus touchdowns, 50-plus touchdowns. he might deserve MVP at this point because Tom Brady's doing things that I never thought we would see somebody his age. Tom Brady just absolutely put on a complete clinic versus the Eagles. The Eagles couldn't get anything going. Like I said, Jalen Hurts was awful. He had 258 yards. He couldn't run the ball anywhere. He threw one touchdown. He threw two interceptions, and one was in the end zone to the point where it didn't seem like anybody was there, and then all of a sudden the defender came out of nowhere and he intercepted the ball, and that would have made it a 17-point game at the time, but they only got 10 points and they didn't even hit 17 points in the game. The Buccaneers dominated and they won 31-15. And I talked about it a minute ago. These games were all pretty much blowouts except the Raiders and the Bengals and then the Cowboys and 49ers, but we'll talk about the 49ers and Cowboys in a minute. But the Buccaneers and Eagles game was just, the Buccaneers defense showed up. They got everybody healthy, and it was just crazy to watch and crazy to see that the Buccaneers continue to do this, and they ain't stopping. But one of the other things I noticed was that they talked a lot about the stats going into the Buccaneers and everything like that. And they said Tom Brady owns this, Tom Brady does this. If the Buccaneers didn't have Tom Brady, the Buccaneers wouldn't have the Super Bowl. They wouldn't have all these playoff wins that they've had the last few seasons. And it's just crazy to see what Tom Brady has done. I was actually talking to one of my friends. They should just make the Super Bowl package. It includes Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette or some good running back, and then a defense. And then Tom Brady and them could just go on to win Super Bowls for every team in the NFL. That would be fun, right? Because you take away Tom Brady from the Buccaneers are a team that's sitting in last place in their division. But they got Tom Brady, so they did their thing. Tom Brady just put up numbers, and yeah, the Buccaneers will be moving on to the divisional round. Now, let's talk about one of my favorite games of the week. It was the 49ers versus the Cowboys. And it wasn't even because it was the 49ers and Cowboys. They did this game on Nickelodeon again. I don't know if you remember, but last year they did the Chicago Bears versus New Orleans Saints in the wildcard round on Nickelodeon, and it ended up being something very different and very unique. And they did the same thing this year, and honestly, that's the only way you can watch football, especially for somebody like me that really doesn't have, like, the Bears aren't in it, so I'm not really, like, hyped for it. It gives a different aspect, and it's a good way for kids to learn the game of football, and they really do a good job, Nate Burleson does, and the kids on the sidelines, and all the good announcers that they have. It's awesome to see. But other than the broadcast, this game was wild, people. This game was nuts. Jimmy G looked like he was the Jimmy G on the New England Patriots. He didn't put up great numbers, but that defense played phenomenal, and they just did their thing. Nick Bosa, he ended up leaving the game at some point, but he put up a show from what he played, and that defense for the 49ers was just absolutely amazing. Jimmy G only put up 172 yards, like I just said. He did throw one interception, but Eli Mitchell put up 96 yards, one touchdown, and he had some receiving yards. The biggest contributor in the game, of course, Deebo Samuel did his thing. Deebo do everything. George Kittle didn't have a good game, but Brandon Ayuk had 5 receptions for 66 yards. And Brandon Ayuk is somebody we were in fantasy, we were worried about and everything, but he's showing up in the big time for the playoffs, and he might be a big reason on why the 49ers could upset. The 49ers could upset the Dallas Cowboys. The 49ers did end up upsetting the Dallas Cowboys 23-17. Dak Prescott had really good numbers. He put up 254 yards, 1 touchdown. He did put up 27 rushing yards, and he had 1 touchdown. That was really good numbers. But the thing that happened at the end of the game, there was 14 seconds left, no timeouts, and you run the ball, and you stop it, and you spike it, but you have to remember that you have to give the ball to the referee. You have to give the ball to the referee so the referee can set it, and then you can spike the ball. But instead, Dak decided to hand it to his center so the center could spike it, but then the referee had to grab it again and put it down, and that wasted about 3 or 4 seconds off the clock, and time ran out, and Dak Prescott and the Cowboys did not have an opportunity Two, spike the ball and try a Hail Mary. What are we doing, people? It's the playoffs. You always give your shot. They literally threw the ball down the field 3 or 4 times. They gained about 50, 60 yards. And then you decide to run the ball up the middle with no timeouts. Why didn't you run out of bounds, Dak Prescott? And then you have the nerve to say that you respect the fans for throwing stuff at the referees because the referees didn't do their job. Actually, the referees did do their job. You didn't do your job. But we're not going to get into a fight, and I ain't trying to argue with a professional athlete, but the Cowboys made a big mistake, and now that costed them. And after being them boys, we go into the Super Bowl, we the best team, Dak is MVP. Dak is MVP. Thanks for taking away that from Mitch Trubisky, even though Mitch is sitting on the Bills now. Dak was MVP, and the Cowboys got a first-round elimination. And now the 49ers are moving on to go face the Green Bay Packers. I just cannot even believe that. After that wild game, though, in Dallas, we had a game. It was Big Ben, the Pittsburgh Steelers, versus Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. This Sunday night game was possibly Big Ben's last game, and everybody expected the Chiefs to win. Everybody expected Mahomes to do his thing. But in the beginning of this game, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense came out to play. TJ Watt did his thing. He had some sacks in the beginning of the game, and then he decided to bat a ball down at one point, and then he had a sack. He had a fumble recovery, and he slid into the end zone, and the Pittsburgh Steelers were the first team to score. We were like, could this really happen? But no, because Patrick Mahomes came back, and he did his thing. He threw for 404 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. He ran the ball a little bit, but the biggest guy that ran the ball, everybody was worried with CEH out. Darrell Williams had a problem. He had an injury. Derek Gore, he was been in the game a little bit, but everybody forgot about the guy that used to be on the Minnesota Vikings, Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon came out and had the game of his life. He had 61 yards. He had a receiving touchdown. He had so many receptions. It was ridiculous to watch this man play left and right, and he just did phenomenal for that running game for the Kansas City Chiefs. And Jerick McKinnon might be that running back for the Chiefs that could and lead their running game, if everybody is not able to get healthy. Travis Kelce, he didn't have a catch for a while, but then all of a sudden he decided to do his thing and do Travis Kelce things, and he had 5 receptions for 108 yards and 1 touchdown. Travis Kelce and the Kansas City Chiefs put up 42 points, and the Steelers only put up 21. Big Ben had 215 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, but a lot of that was after the Chiefs put up a dominant show in the first half, and the Big Ben and the Steelers just could not get going. Najee Harris couldn't get going at all. The biggest disappointment of the week. I thought he was going to do a lot better, but he didn't. He only had 29 rushing yards. He did have some receptions, but he fumbled the ball, and that took away from the receptions. But they just, like I said, the Pittsburgh Steelers couldn't get anything going after Patrick Mahomes took over the game, and they just dominated left and right. So the Kansas City Chiefs now will be going on and facing Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And that game next week, people, is going to be an absolute clinic. I was hoping to see that in the championship game, and but we get to see it in the divisional round. And in my opinion, whoever wins that game, I think is going to go to the Super Bowl. Not saying the Bengals or Titans can't do it, because I think Joey B and Jamar Chase can do their thing, and that really good defense. But I just feel like, I think that's the one team, and I think that, if Josh Allen and the Bills can get past Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, I think that the Bills have a really good shot in the AFC Championship game. But now that we talked about all the AFC games and we have the AFC set, there was one more game left on the schedule for Wild Card Weekend. It was the first ever Monday night game, and honestly, this was the game I was expecting. I didn't know who was going to win. I thought it was going to go back and forth. I thought it was going to be a shootout. I thought these teams were going to dominate. It was going to be 34-45, something like that, an absolute bonanza, fantasy galore if you do fantasy playoff challenges like I do. But it was the complete opposite. Aaron Donald and the Rams defense made Kyler Murray look like a child, and they looked like they sent his ass back. They should have sent him to the major leagues, and he might have been better off playing for the Oakland Athletics. Nothing against my man Kyler, but he just did not show up in the playoffs. He had 137 yards, 2 touchdowns. James Conner tried his best to do what he could, but he was also injured. He had 19 yards and 1 touchdown. Christian Kirk had 6 receptions for 51 yards, but Kyler Murray just could not get going, and honestly, I think that has a lot to do with DeAndre Hopkins being out. Everybody kind of forgot about our man DeAndre. DeAndre was a big receiver, and he was a big weapon for Kyler, and ever since they started off 7-0 and they went on that awful run and they barely made the playoffs, that was a big missing piece for them. But the Rams, they showed up, and Matthew Stafford looks like he's ready for a playoff run. Are we going to see Matthew Stafford? We're going to see Matthew Stafford. I'm sorry. I'm saying, we might see Matthew Stafford versus Aaron Rodgers in the championship game. And if that's the case, oh my God, what if for me as an NFC North Bears fan, that's like my worst nightmare. Let's not have that happen. But Matthew Stafford showed that he was a good quarterback this week. He had 202 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. One of them went to his man Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp had 61 yards, 5 receptions, and 1 touchdown. Matthew Stafford was the leading running back. He had 22 yards, but Cam Akers showed that he's coming back. And to be honest, people, as a bold prediction next year, Cam Akers might be a top 5 running back. And if you could get him, I'd grab him ASAP. Because Cam Akers could be that guy to lead you to a championship. And he might have been that guy to lead you to a championship this year if he just didn't get hurt. But that was the end of this year, and fantasy season is over. So I don't want to talk too much about fantasy because this isn't a fantasy football show. But just got to keep in mind and always keep thinking about next year if you want to take home that ring. And if you're in a case like me where I got to defend my title. But enough about fantasy football. That wild card round, to be honest, people, we said it. I said it in the beginning. It wasn't like an awful week and everything like that, but it just wasn't what I was hoping for, and I was hoping to see a lot better games. But now that super wild card weekend is over, we have the final 8. We're down to the divisional round. We're almost to championship week. Let's take a minute, and now let's preview the divisional round and the final 8. Who's making it to championship week? Texans. Before we get to the games, the Texans fired David Culley, and now they are looking for a new head coach. And I don't want to name all the candidates because there's so many candidates out there for a head coaching job, and there's 6 teams without a head coach right now, counting the Raiders because the Raiders were eliminated in the wild card round, and they might even keep their coach, but we'll have to see. Speaking of the Raiders, though, Mike Mayock is out in Vegas as the general manager, so they will also be looking for a general manager. So now that we talked about some of the big headlines coming into the week, if there is any more breaking news for the NFL and head coaching, injuries, or anything, go check out Tino's Time for all of your breaking news. But now that we talked about everything that's going on in the headlines, let's talk about the games that are going to go down in the divisional round and which teams are going to make it to championship week and be in the Final Four. The schedule is out. The first 2 games on Saturday, it's Joe Burrow and the Bengals versus Derrick Henry, the returning Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, and A.J. Brown and the Tennessee Titans. Last week, they were sitting at home for Super Wild Card Weekend with their heads back and their legs up, maybe looking at their toes like Aaron Rodgers. But the Titans and Bengals game is a game that I'm really excited for because it's a game that I don't know who is going to win. I want to take the Bengals. I want to take the Titans, and it's going to be such a good game that it's one of those things that these are the type of games I want to see in the playoffs for teams that, we always talk, like if you're a big team like the Bears, for me, example, I'm a Bears fan, and the Bears aren't in it, I love to watch games like this, and I cannot wait to see what happens. But after everything is over, I'm going to take the Tennessee Titans. I think with the extra week, Derrick Henry coming back, not that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase aren't going to put on an absolute show. I just think that the Tennessee Titans with getting a healthy Derrick Henry back, Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones looked really good the last week of the season. If all of those things click, the Tennessee Titans are going to win, and they're going to move on to the AFC Championship game, and that means they would host either the Chiefs or the Bills, but we'll get into that game a little bit later. But I am taking the Tennessee Titans to win and move on, and I'm going to say the final score will be 35-28. I'll say the Tennessee Titans win by a touchdown. And Joe Burrow will probably put up 2 or 3 touchdowns. At least I hope he does, because him and Jamar Chase need to put on a show. But the other game on Saturday, it's the 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo, George Kittle, the people's tight end, and Debo Do-Everything Samuel versus Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Matt LaFleur, and the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers have dominated since Matt LaFleur has been there. They've had a 13-3 season every year, and Aaron Rodgers looks like he made his case for MVP. But they have a tough task going up against the 49ers. And yes, the 49ers lost a lot of defensive players, but hopefully they get back and get healthy, because if not, Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing catch after getting a week off and chilling and doing his thing, probably looking at his toe, making sure the toenail don't crack off, whatever the heck Aaron Rodgers likes to do. But I think that this game is going to be really good, and I hope that it's close, because if it is just Aaron Rodgers just beating the crap out of the 49ers, that's no fun, because we actually want to see a game that is actually competitive and actually, going against somebody. But after the game is settled, and hopefully it's a good game, I'm still going to take the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. There's no going up against Aaron Rodgers right now. I think he's a man on a mission, and I think he wants to go all the way to the Super Bowl. So I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers to win 28-27, and they're only going to win by 1, and Aaron Rodgers might have to throw a game-winning touchdown. I don't know if that's going to be the case exactly, but if it is, you could go back and say, hey, your boy Tino got something right finally. But, I'm going to take Green Bay to move on, and yes, it might be too predictable to take the 2 number 1 seeds, but I just think them getting their extra week off, getting everybody healthy, I think that's just going to be a big booster, but you never know, because we could see a wild card team make it to the Super Bowl and win it. We've seen it before with the New York Giants. Just ask Eli Manning. Don't ask Tom Brady, though, because Tom Brady might not want to talk about that. Speaking of Tom Brady, though, let's talk about the games that are on Sunday now. It's the Rams versus the Buccaneers. And the winner of this game would go on and face Green Bay if Green Bay does win on Saturday. But if miraculous happens and Aaron Rodgers blows it and the 49ers win, then whoever wins this game would be hosting the NFC Championship game. And the Buccaneers and Rams, honestly, I think it's going to be a really good game. And my friend made a good point that Tom Brady has kind of struggled versus the Rams. But the way that defense played last week versus the Eagles, and yes, we could say it's the Eagles or whatever, but that playoff defense that shows up is just disgusting, and it's sick. And they got everybody back and healthy. So, I think that Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp are going to put on a really good show. They're going to have to throw the ball and compete, and Cooper Kupp might go off and have a phenomenal game. But Tom Brady is just so good that I just cannot go against him, and he's another one. I think we are setting up the matchup of a lifetime in the NFC Championship game between Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers versus Tampa Bay and the Buccaneers. And that's fine with me. Not that I want to see the Packers go any further, but I think that'd be a great championship game. And, Aaron Rodgers doesn't show up in championship games, so it looks like Tom Brady might just go on to the Super Bowl again. And hey, that works for me. Just don't tell anybody. Shh. But I think that would be a great NFC Championship game. So I'm taking the Buccaneers and Packers to come out of the divisional round and make it to the Final Four. And now let's talk about the last game that's going on in the divisional round. It's my favorite game of the weekend, to be honest. This is the game that I wanted to see in the championship. I didn't want to see these two face each other yet. But the Bills and Chiefs, only one's making it to the championship game. Is it going to be Josh Allen Or is it going to be Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs going to be able to do their thing and go on the show? And are we going to really see a rematch of the Super Bowl last year? Because I don't want to see that at all. But this game is going to be so much fun to watch, and thank God it's the last game of the week, because it would be a good way to end the divisional round, and hopefully we're all chilling, and hopefully we get all of our predictions right. But at the end of this game, I can't even believe I'm saying it, people, but I'm going bold on this one, and I'm taking the upset, and I'm taking Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, Michael Hyde, and all of the Buffalo Bills to dominate the Chiefs. We've seen what Patrick Mahomes does versus good defenses, and the Bills' defense is one of those defenses. They could stop Patrick Mahomes. They could double-team Travis Kelce. They can double-team Tyreek Hill, and I just don't know how well it's going to go for them. And, yes, the Bills are going into a hostile environment of the Chiefs, or you know what? No, never mind. The Chiefs are at home. So, it's one of those things, but I think that no matter what, I think Josh Allen is going to be able to overcome this. And I think the Buffalo Bills are going to win this game. And I think the final score will be like 31-24, maybe even 28, something like that. It's going to be a really close game. And it's going to be really good to the point where I cannot wait to see what happens in this game. It's just going to be so much fun to watch. It's going to be great. So I'm taking the upset, and I'm taking the Buffalo Bills to win 31-28. And that's setting up the AFC Championship game of the Tennessee Titans and the Buffalo Bills. And if those are the final four, I'm okay with that, because those two games would be phenomenal to watch on Super Championship Week. Is that what we're going to call it? A Super Championship Week? Or could we just call it Championship Week? But I hope those are the final four. And the divisional round is going to be so much fun. At least I hope so. Hopefully it's better than the wild card round, because that wild card round, people, was awful. It was just too many blowouts. And the games weren't even close except the few that we talked about. But there you have it. I've given you everything that went down in Super Wild Card Weekend. We previewed the divisional round. I gave you my predictions who I think the final four are going to be. I hope everybody is having a safe and a happy new year. I know it's 2 weeks into 2022 already, but I can't even believe how fast time is flying. It's almost flipping February at this point. The Super Bowl is in about 3 weeks. We have the Winter Olympics coming up. The Royal Rumble is in a few weeks. If you watch wrestling and you listen to Tino's Time Wrestling, make sure to check out the Royal Rumble pre-show coming out in a few weeks. We also have Tino's Time collection episode, and I'm going to finally show you all the crazy things that I have behind me. I have some things in front of me, and I have some things in my room, and you people are going to be like, what is wrong with you? But that's okay, because, I love doing it, and I love, showing people. And some people say I have a museum, and that works, because that's what I eventually want to have one day. But until next week, when we recap the divisional round, we preview championship week, and we get ready to talk about the final four and which team survived the Elite Eight. This is your boy Tino, signing out.